300 weddings a year.
Wow.
And so it's
300 weddings?
Yeah. There's a lot of weddings in
There's
Dallas-Fort
only
Worth.
365 days in a year.
If you hop onto Google and you search for, Fort Worth wedding DJ or whatever, you're going to see us at the very top. And I had to learn that, if I want to grow, if I want to make things scale, I have to step back and press into, the other gifts and talents and the people that I have, on my team, and let them soar, and be okay with it. You hear the cliche all the time is, put smart people around you and makes you look smart. You can be, whatever.
Like until you
get in there and you start to work on that. Yeah.
Or until you meet someone that's smarter than you.
Well, yeah,
and you're like, hold up, I don't like this.
I don't like the way it feels. But you want to be a there you are person. You want to walk in a room and be, hey, I see you. There you are. That kind of thing. What you don't want to be is, here I am. Like, let me tell you all about what I do. Let me tell you how busy I am. You can do far greater things, if you do take yourself out of the equation.
Welcome to the Faith Hustle Podcast, where we help young Christian entrepreneurs learn how to build their business and careers God's way. My name is Mukwenda. I'm your host. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 10 years, and throughout that time, I've had the joy and privilege to be able to be mentored by some of the most incredible business owners that I know that were not just amazing in their field of business, but they were faithful followers of Jesus and faithful to their families and had a holistic view of success. And that's what we're trying to strive for and achieve here, is that type of success. And we teach on 5 pillars here at Faith Hustle. We teach on stewardship, on humility, on generosity, on integrity, and on being spirit-led, walking with God in your business. And if those things stand out to you of like, yeah, I want to grow in that myself, then I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you may listen to, whether it be Apple or Spotify, YouTube. If you're watching from YouTube, thank you for watching. We encourage you to leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from, tell us how we can help serve and help you in your faith hustle. And if this podcast has been a blessing to you in any way, if you've been listening for the past few months, we encourage you to leave a review. Those reviews matter. They help a ton. We pride ourselves in trying to create the best experience for our listeners. So that would be much appreciated. So thank you so much. And on today's episode, speaking of mentors that have spoken in my life, I literally, this man, since I've lived in Texas, has been one of those men in my life from a spiritual sense, from a business sense. He's been in business for over 20 years. His family is incredible. I've seen his family life, and I'm like, okay, that's the type of family dynamic I want in my home, and how they've run their business. There's just so many gems that's going to come from this that I literally can't wait for y'all to listen and tap in. So make sure you have some notes, get inspired today. We got my friend, mentor, spiritual guide in my life, Mr. William Ryan.
Hey, I'm excited to be here, Mukwenda. This is cool. I'm so proud of you, even just for launching this thing and for doing this, but really pumped to, like you said, give maybe a couple of gems that might help somebody along the way here in their faith hustle.
We got way more than just a little gems. No, there's a lot. And like I said, we met, we went to the same church, and we've done worship nights together. We've done life together in a lot of different ways. But also I've gotten to learn from you, and just your dynamic of business has been really cool. One, it's like a family thing. Like all your family at some point probably has been a part of it. And
it's true.
Yeah. And it's just cool to see how you've integrated that in your life like that. It's just been amazing. So I'm excited. So we're going to jump right in. One, I would love for you to give context of what you do. So you have It's Your Night Entertainment.
Right.
And you've been running that for 20 years.
Yeah, just this last November, 20 years. It went really quick, though.
I'm
not that old, actually. I think I started when I was 5 or 6, but no, yeah.
But you're still going.
Still going, yeah.
I mean, and that's to stay in anything for 20 years is beyond impressive. It's it's awesome. But talk a little bit about what It's Your Night, and also, just how you even got in it, how you got into DJing and how that led to, we're going to talk about all that stuff and how that led to you building a system and having other DJs under you, like all this different stuff. I love to learn a little bit of context as well as your story.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, so It's Your Night. So you kind of gave a little bit away there. DJs. That's one big thing. That's kind of how it all got started. So It's Your Night Entertainment. We're basically a wedding production company here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it's incredible. We do over 300 weddings a year.
Wow.
And so it's
300 weddings.
Yeah. There's a lot of weddings in
There's
Dallas-Fort
only
Worth,
365 days in a year.
yeah, there's multiples in a weekend for sure.
Dang.
So. But DJing is really one of my things that I love to do, and that's primarily what our company's doing with these weddings is DJing. But we also do a lot of lighting design for weddings and special events. We do photo booths, and we also have several guys on the team that do live music. So they play, they sing, they also DJ. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
That's
with these
awesome.
Weddings. So yeah, so it's a blast. But yeah, so that's the It's Your Night Entertainment. That's what all that's about.
So how did you? I mean, obviously, I'm sure it started with you getting into DJing yourself. When did you start?
Yeah, so crazy story. So I started DJing when I was like a teenager.
Oh wow!
It's
like your son.
Yeah. My son. I know he's I have twins. I've been married for 22 years. I have twins, a boy and a girl twin, and they're about to be 20 this September.
Crazy.
So. But yeah, my son, same thing. He started real early, with photography, and he's doing wedding photography stuff on his own. But yeah, so started when I was a teenager DJing. It was funny. One of my first events that I did that was actually, not just like a house party or something like that, was at a fancy hotel in Dallas. And I remember my dad had to take and drop me off because I couldn't even drive. I wasn't old enough to drive. So, he wasn't real thrilled about the whole coming back after midnight to pick me up either. But it worked. He was supportive. So,
I love that.
So yeah, so started when I was real young and just had a passion for music, had a passion for just bringing the fun to parties and stuff. And weddings that didn't really come till a little later on. A lot of the parties and stuff I was doing as a teenager, those people eventually started getting married or their siblings did, and they needed a DJ.
With your climate.
Yeah, and they would ask, "Hey, can you do a wedding?" I'm like, "Sure, I can do a wedding." I had never done one before, but so that's part of it. But yeah, so it started doing that as a teenager, and then it was a side hustle. I was actually working in radio here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. For a while as a teenager as well. I worked at the #1 Christian music radio station in America at the time, and now it's a big network now, but it used to be a station here in Dallas. And so I worked there, and I was still DJing weddings and doing parties and stuff on the side. And but eventually, led into doing it as a career, is what I'm doing now, and left radio and all that stuff. So it's a long story. I can fill you in some details as we go, but it's been quite the journey, and it's been incredible.
Wow, that's I love. I wish I would have gotten into video and kind of more my profession when I was a teenager. I probably got into it when I was like 18, 19, but it's amazing. I think the thing I love about your story is you could have easily said, "Oh yeah, that was a little hobby I did when I was a teenager." Yeah. Like that's not really, but you just kept following that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For someone that maybe is like in their younger 20s and they got a hobby right now or they got something they're passionate about, but like, to be honest, they might have been told by people like, this is not get a big time.
Get a real job, right?
Get a job.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to pay the bills. This is not like, clearly you've been doing it for 20 years. So like, it's clearly worked. And so like, what, I don't know, what's your encouragement to someone in that stage?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. I think, it's important with anybody. And I'm assuming, a lot of people are entrepreneurs that are watching this and hearing these things, and they're thinking through like, okay, what's the why behind what I'm doing, And I think that's important. I think the why is a huge thing because we all have a passion. We all, have a dream. We all want to do something. And, maybe it's graphic design, maybe it's DJing weddings, maybe it's, accounting, whatever it is, whatever you're passionate about. It doesn't really matter when you start. I mean, starting early, and having time to really build is, I love that, about my story is that I started so young, but I think you can start any time, but I think the important thing is doing something that you love. I know you hear that a lot, and that sounds a little cliche.
No, sure.
But really, you got to have a why behind it. If the why, if you're trying to start something new, you're trying to drum up a new business, and the why behind it is, hey, I see somebody else doing it and I want to make a lot of money. I mean, that's not going to last very long. You're gonna burn out pretty quick.
Yes.
You want to start a podcast. You got to have a really good why behind that. And so for me, DJing weddings, being a part of parties, and it wasn't just the DJing side of things that really drew me to that. It really was the love of people and being a part. And so doing weddings is primarily what I do now. And that whole thing started because I just love being a part. I love everything that weddings stand for and all that. But getting to work with couples, that was important. Not just showing up, I mean, there's club DJs, there's DJs that do corporate events and all that. Nothing wrong with that. But I just had a passion for relationships and for getting to know people in their big day. And so that's kind of, but again, it's what I love. And if I was just doing it for the money, there's a lot of other easier ways to make money, so, as we all know.
You can have your weekends.
Absolutely back. Yeah, that's a hard thing. There's sacrifice with everything you do too. I mean, weekends, I remember my kids were young. I mean, having to miss some birthday parties because weddings are only on Saturdays usually. So we would try to schedule, parties and do outings out other days besides Saturday, but it didn't always work out. So there was a lot of things when everybody else is off work and having a good time at the lake, I'm having to pack up and go DJ a wedding. And so there was a lot of sacrifice there, but yeah, you're right.
And listen, I tell people all the time, I'm a retired wedding videographer. I only did a handful of weddings, but it was enough for me to know I don't want to do this.
That's what it takes. I don't want to do this. You got to try it sometimes.
No, I literally only do it for friends and family. And I told them, you got to beg me to do it. But you have to love it.
Yeah.
The friends that I are doing it, whether it's wedding photography, and they're making anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, a wedding or whatever, and they're doing multiple weekends, right? Like they love it. Yeah. Like when wedding season comes, they get excited and they love it. And I'm like, it's hard on your feet, all those different things. But like, if it's just for a quick check,
right?
It's just. Yeah, the first sign of pressure you're gonna run.
Yeah, the first time pressure. Yeah, and the first major obstacles that you face, and I mean we've all been through the year 2020. You go through things like that. I mean, that can shake anybody's business, no matter what it is. But the events industry for sure got shaken during that time. And so, but yeah, any obstacle like that, you might want to go run in and find something else easier if you're not really passionate about what you're doing. So,
right. So one thing I'm really intrigued me about your business model is. There are a lot of people that they do a good job at being solo, right?
Yeah,
so especially in any type of craft, or I would call what you do creative in a sense still, you know what I mean? It's hard for them to build a business around it. Yeah. It's hard for it to go outside of them. So it's like, if they don't show up, it doesn't happen, right? They have to be at everything. But again, you mentioned you have a team now of other other performers that, I mean, you yourself could never do 300 in a year on your best day.
Right.
You could not, you know what I mean? And so what was how did you develop that model? Like what inspired that? And then like, what did that kind of practically look like,
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I never set out to have multiple. I honestly never set out to start a business like this. I mean, again, it was a passion I loved doing, and I was working in radio and thought that would be my career. Is working in radio. I was, pretty high up at the radio station and kind of had achieved the pinnacle of what I thought would be like, okay, this is good. The next step for me is probably manage multiple stations or something, or whatever. But yeah, so growing and scaling and stuff wasn't one of the things that I set out to be. And I think that's important too, to remember when you're starting off something, even if you're starting solo, you kind of want to have the idea of, can I scale this someday? But don't set out to start scaling right away. Like set out to do it well yourself first for a little while, as much as you can. Obviously, if the demand is high enough and you can't pull it all off, then you have to scale a little faster than later. But for me, it was me solo for a really long time, and the idea of expanding, it actually honestly made me a little nervous to do that, because when you do something solo, especially if it's a service or something like that, or a product, you kind of have this idea that, hey, I'm the only one that can really do this well. Like if I start sharing the load with other people, are they going to do it as well as I do it? Are they going to, is our reputation going to get tarnished if they do a bad job? And are they going to have the same passion that I have? It's a lot of pressure. So honestly, I was a little scared to do that. But the Lord, I think the important thing to remember through all this is He's our source, and there was a point in time where He was sending a lot more than what I could actually handle, and I knew. And with me, we're booking time, so it's like I can only do one event on a day. So I know that it's pretty easy to know that if I get another one for that particular date, that I have to turn it away or I have to find someone else to do it. And so, it started happening a lot where I was getting multiple, inquiries about a certain date, and I realized I was already booked up, couldn't do it. So what are we going to do? And so, relationships has been a really important thing for my business. Relationships really, my whole story is all based on relationship. Yeah. We can do a whole podcast on that. But,
absolutely.
But I will tell you though, that relationships, everybody who's on my team, we've had a few hires where we've gotten them on, Indeed or whatever, and they didn't really work out. But everybody else on my team though, that's still on the team longevity wise, has all been relationships. The very first person that I brought on was also a relationship. It was somebody that I knew, somebody that my wife went to church with, she was in youth group with this guy, and he was looking to DJ, had DJ'd before, and I was, needing somebody else. And so I said, hey, you want to come along and do this? And again, scared to death, like, is he going to do it the way I would do it? But I think what's important too during all that is you start to scale and you start to bring on people and take that step. It's real important, I think, to start to have, even to think through, when whatever you're doing, if you're thinking through like, okay, I'm about to start adding people or scaling, start really fine tuning your processes and start figuring out things that you can sort of apply to every, whatever you're doing. And so for me, it was, what are going to be our processes? What's our workflow when we get a lead? How are we going to care for them and steward them well? And how are we going to, book them? And how's that booking process going to look like? How is their meeting with that DJ going to be? And so I worked really, really, really hard for those first couple times and, hit some brick walls and failed a few times and all that, but really start to try to figure out those processes to really, basically give everybody the same experience that they would have with me with someone else. And so, and it's hard, to even with that vision of those processes to try to make that trickle down to people that are coming in behind that don't share the same vision or the same passion.
And they're not as I think no one will ever be as bought in as you are.
Absolutely.
Almost
That's
never.
been a learning process too. You just assume, hey, I'm, you're going
to
be bought in like me, but that doesn't happen. So some people are there for different reasons, for the paycheck, for whatever. And that's fine, but you have to know that going in.
Exactly. But like you said, like for that, you build standards, processes around that. Like at least there's some fail safes.
Right. Yeah.
That like at the very least, they're going to get this type of quality of service and whatnot. And you might not be able to control everything, but like, again, like, people, you can find people who put in 100% effort, but they're not going to have that same buy-in of belief. But I love that because I've been to your warehouse. I've been to your office. I mean, it is dialed in. Like they have speakers like hanging from the ceiling and chandeliers and all this. Like it is so organized.
Oh man, thanks.
But like you could just grab and go. Like if I was a DJ, I'm like, all right, I have everything I need. Grab and go. Yeah. And there's system, there's order, and I love that. And like you said, like it wasn't overnight. It took a long time. It took a long time, but I think I had a mentor also tell me that as far as like document your process.
Right, absolutely.
Like actually like write down how you did it, what was the steps you did. Because a lot of times when you do something for so long, you're just doing it in your sleep.
Right. Yeah. It's really easy too if you're doing it yourself, if you don't ever document it, you just assume when someone else is going to do it that way. But when they don't, that's when you start to think, oh man, I got to like train these people. I got to actually have like a manual. I got to have, at least some check boxes to make sure that they're kind of at least staying somewhat within the guardrails, But yeah, that's important. Start documenting what you do, even if it seems kind of like this is silly. I'm going to write down that I'm, 10 weeks out, I'm going to check in with this person and do this, or with this client, or every year around this time, I'm going to reach out to this particular crop of people to see if they want to renew or whatever. Like have processes and start putting those things down that you would naturally do, because that's just real easy training material for the people coming in behind you. And even, the idea with anything is you kind of want to, work yourself out of that position where you can kind of step away and work more on the business instead of in it, And so having those things and those documented, procedures, manuals, things like that you can do early on, it's just going to help you more, in the long run to be able to pass that along.
But I know a lot of people that are not willing to, and part of it timing is too, right? Like you said, you did solo for a while, right? But I know a lot of people are like, this is going to take too much time to teach you. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah. Oh,
and it's like, how many times are you going to say that?
Yes,
and it's like, it just never gets done.
Yeah.
And actually it leads me to my next question as far as what have you seen of common mistakes of people who get started? Because again, it just reminds me of that, of like not writing their processes down, not thinking through how they're doing something, and not being willing to train anybody. Like what are some of the other common things you're like, I just see a lot of people get tripped up in this when they're starting.
Yeah. Well, the doing everything yourself, I'm still totally guilty of that. Even nowadays, that's been a process I've been trying to honestly really work on. It is a lot easier sometimes for me just to say, you know what, I'm going to do this myself because I want it done a certain way, or maybe I've given that off to somebody and they're not quite doing it the way that I would hope they would. And so you're naturally, but I think I've learned a lot being a dad in that sense of, with your kids are real young, you're doing a lot of things for them. You're basically just, letting them kind of just be kids. And so, but there kind of becomes a point, especially teenage years, where you sort of start to be more of a coach. You start to kind of be a little more hands off, not do it because I told you so, but do it because I think this would be really good for you. And you start to work on the heart and the why behind it is a little bit more. And so I think, that's helped me even in trying to have that same approach with people on my team and not to want to just do everything myself. And so it's been a learning process, but I would say that's a really big one, I think, for entrepreneurs too. I mean, I think you have a vision, you have a certain way you want it done. You have, if it's creative, you have a certain vision. I mean, all the way down to the way it's supposed to look. And so that's real hard to let go of that. If you're a photographer, you might have a certain shooting style that you're like, and everything has to look this way. And you have a second shooter come along with you or somebody else that doesn't have that same style. And it can be challenging, but you have to take the time to develop that in somebody. Just like I was, so I didn't grow up like in a Christian home, and I got saved when I was young in a VBS. I was 12 years old, but I didn't get discipled till I was in my 30s. And so
really,
but I think that's part of it too. I mean, you got to take some time because I didn't know which direction to go, until I was discipled. And I think for people in your business, for people coming behind you, for people that are working for you, even with clients, you just have to take time to really explain things and to disciple them, in a way. I mean, these were disciple, but it's literally like, come along, like, let me show you how this works, and take the time to do that, and don't try to do it yourself, So that's a huge one.
I think you said something there that's a real gem. I'm learning as you're saying it, because I think if we are taking our notes from Jesus, right? Like, he would obviously teach to his disciples,
right?
But there's so many times he just integrated lessons as they were going.
Yeah, come on, let's go.
So it was like, hey, we're going here. Hey, here's how you cast out a demon. You did it wrong. You tried.
Right.
Hey, this comes only by prayer and fasting. All good.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show you this. Or like, I remember there's one passage I was reading not too long ago. Jesus is teaching to a whole crowd. Then he like turns around to his disciples and like gives them like a little side nugget.
Right.
Then goes back to teaching. And like he would take them to pray with him. Like they're watching him as he.
Yeah, you're modeling.
You're modeling, instead of it being, like you said, there's a point where it's like, it's hands-on and you're like, come with me. And that takes patience.
Right.
Like everything you're saying, like, no, this is the fruit of the spirit of patience, of like, if you want to grow, you need people. And if you're going to train people, you're going to need patience.
Right. Yeah. And you need people. I mean, no matter, my pastor, I always hear him say, teams win championships, I mean, it's true, like it's sometimes it's easier to be the solo, to be the silo, and just kind of keep everything. But you can only do so much on your own. And so when you start to realize like the Lord has provided relationships with people around you that have great talents and skills and things to offer. And when you can just tap into that and you can, bring them along and show them how things are done, you might be surprised because they might do something even better than the way maybe you were doing it before. And you're like, I can learn from them. And that's the beautiful thing about it, when you take that and you have that patience and take the time to do that.
Right. So, I mean, speaking to that, what's been outside of like the 300 weddings that you do a year of being able to multiply yourself, what's been the other benefit of building a team, building the systems and processes, all things from, of course, like the output, but also just like seeing other people who are doing what they love and being able to do it.
Yeah.
Like what's been the benefit of taking that road, which I'm sure is hard and took a lot of years to develop, but what's been the benefit of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, another benefit, just to seeing like what the Lord's been doing, like with my business and stuff too, is, when it was just me, it was really, obviously it was a huge blessing to be able to, to get income from that and be able to be your own boss and all the things that people dream for, and all that. But I think the cooler layer of that, of owning a business, is then to be able to have people on your team that are also benefiting from, what, through the flow of you become more of a river than you do a reservoir. You're letting things flow out of your business, and it's all able to, put people in their lane where they're able to, enjoy what they're doing. They're able to make income off of something that you're a part of, that the Lord has kind of allowed you to steward. And so I think that's an incredible thing is to be able to, that's another benefit I think that's come out of all this, is that there's so many guys on my team that are really great about, going and being a DJ at a party or singing music, that never had really a platform to be able to do that. But now, because the Lord is our source of sending us leads and, lots of weddings every year, we're able now to distribute that to other people on a team that wouldn't have that. And so, you get the benefit of that. You also get the benefit of just, again, not more flow as far as number of events. It's not necessarily as important, but also being, when you are doing a lot of volume and you have a lot of people and a lot of resources available to be able to do those things, you naturally sort of, rise to the top of like people's, their thoughts of who do I call if I need this, and so they naturally will pick out the larger, organizations that they know can handle those things. And there's backup plans in place and things. There's neat things that come along with that about having people too. So if you can't do something, you have people on a team that can step in case there is a crisis or whatever.
Because there's no worse feeling than like, we literally like, I don't have any more time on my calendar, or my week is all, it's already booked up that week, but that could be a huge opportunity, but because you didn't have a system in place, you miss out on those.
Right.
And
totally.
I love that. The one question I love to ask you, in order to do that, you need a lot of humility, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something that, because you can't have, especially when it's your baby, like you said, right? Like people came to you for it, and now you have to distribute that to others. That's a lot. It's patience, but it's also humility.
Yeah.
Like talk about that, how God developed that within you, and just what that has looked like for you.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mentioned a little earlier that I didn't get discipled till I was in my 30s. But if you would have asked me like 20 years ago, about the business, this podcast would probably be a lot different, because I'd probably be like, oh, I'm a self-made man. Look what I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think part of discipleship is, and part of just being a Christ follower is just, dying to yourself. And that humility thing is really, something that I think we all continue to learn, as you go. But humility just in being a leader of anything, honestly, with the business that's scaling things, or, just in your day-to-day, having that humility is really important, I think, because as a business owner, and as a leader and someone who's actually doing the service that we do, still myself, when you have other people on your team that you're also farming things out to, that are representing you, you sometimes discover that they might even be better at it than you. And you have to kind of, that's a humility check right there. You're like, okay, all right. But, you have to lean into that. You can't start to, well, I'm not going to, use that person as much because I need to be the hero. I need to be the big dog, So early on, I had to learn that, if I want to grow, if I want to make things scale, I have to step back and really press into, the other gifts and talents and the people that I have, on my team, and let them soar, and be okay with it, and you hear the cliche all the time is, put smart people around you and makes you look smart. You can be, whatever, like, until you get in there and you start to like work on that. Yeah.
Or until you meet someone that's smarter than you.
Well, yeah.
Like, hold up. I don't like this.
I don't like the way it feels. They're getting all the accolades and I'm not, but no, you have to remember again, as long as you're a team and it's, and that's where you have to also cast vision. You might have people on a team that if they want to be, the spotlight and be the guy, it's sometimes hard. You might even have to cut somebody who's really talented or that just doesn't fit
have
in.
That spirit.
Yeah, they have that spirit if it is really all about them. I heard years ago there was this saying. My wife told me. I think she read it in a book somewhere, maybe. But it was there's two kinds of people. There's the here I am kind of people and there you are kind of people. And that thing stuck with me in so many different ways. I've used this saying. I've coached a lot of my team members with this when we go into networking events or we go into client meetings and things like that. But you want to be a there you are person. You want to walk in a room and be, hey, I see you. There you are. That kind of thing. What you don't want to be is here I am. Like, let me tell you all about what I do. Let me tell you how busy I am. Let me tell you about, and never take time to And so just by having that approach of walking in, and again, it's humility is really what fuels that, because you have to be okay. You have to be humble. You have to be able to be okay not being in the spotlight. Like your time will come. Like it's hard to remember, but you just stay faithful and just keep stewarding things that God's given you. He's gonna raise you up. You just can't chase it and kind of do that. Yeah. So to walk into a room, to have any relationships like that where you can be a there you are person, I think that's just so important. So I think that's been really humbling, to be able to do that and to practice that and walk into networking things and places where your insecurities start to come out. You're like, I don't know, and you naturally just want to become a here I am person because you just don't know what to do. And so you have to work at that. And I think it's really important.
Trust me. Probably the biggest pet peeve of mine. To this day, I hate speed networking events. I don't know if you've ever been to them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Chamber of Commerce events.
Oh, yeah.
No offense to Chamber of Commerce, but man, I went to one back in Michigan, and literally it was like huge round table. You got 10 people. Each person has 60 seconds to make a picture about themselves.
Yeah.
It's a terrible model.
Right. It is. Yeah. Yeah.
No one's listening.
No.
You're just
kind of judging
them.
You're like, really? Did he just say that he's that good at that? You know, like, yeah, right.
Or you're waiting for your turn to speak. So you're like, no one's actually paying attention.
Right.
And so you get a bunch of business cards and it like doesn't lead anywhere.
Yeah,
and like, I mean, maybe for some it does. Like, I'm not hating no Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I am kind of.
Yeah.
But like that spirit, it is But again, if we're going back to Jesus being our model,
yeah.
John 14 is wild to me. And I looked at it way different now than I did when I was younger. Because, you know, when it says, greater works you will do than I have done because I go to my Father. At first, when I was younger, I was like, oh, that pumped me out. Like, man, greater works. But then I'm like, man, that takes actually a lot of humility of like, when I'm parting into you, you will actually be able to multiply and do more with than I did in 3 years.
Yeah.
That's, like you said, if you have any pride in you, that's you're not okay with that.
Right.
Because you're like, no, like I want to be able to have the last word to be said that I was the one. I like you have to take I out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a natural thing, I think, for people, you know, and then the insecurities and the things you want to be. Hey, look what I did. Look what I built. Look what I did, you know? And it's a process. It's not something that overnight you just kind of go, all right, all right, Lord, I surrender this to you. You're my source. I'm going to just let, you know, like that doesn't happen overnight for most. And it definitely didn't for me. So, but yeah, it is important just to step back and realize you can do far greater things, you know, if you do take yourself out of the equation, you know, and obviously you're the one that, you know, the Lord's going to use to be able to maybe do something, but you can't have it like I'm doing it. Look what I did. So yeah.
Yeah. I want to land the plane on this of this kind of last question, and obviously we can flow with it. But one of the things I admire about you and your wife, who you guys have walked with me through some tough life stuff over the past probably 2 years. But one of the things I've admired up close and from afar is how you guys are spirit led and how you seek the Lord on every business decision together as a couple, which I mean, that's a whole thing of itself of like having a spouse that's bought in to, I'm sure you could talk 30 minutes on that. So you can touch on it if you like. But I'd love for you to talk on that because I've seen you guys walk through some tough stuff of hiring and trying to pick the right people. And one thing that has been encouraging for me, again, from this side, looking at you, is like sometimes I think there's always like, I'm waiting for it to get easy. I'm waiting for it to okay, all right. I'm coasting. And it's like, no, there always will be problems. There always will be challenges. And there will always be opportunities to lean on the Lord to like God has to come through. It's just going to look different. Like you might not be broke or you might not like, you can still pay your rent, but like there's still a challenge where it's like only God has to show up. And so one, that's just been encouraging for me of like, okay, I'm not crazy.
Right,
I'm feeling like I just need God all the time. But I'd love for you to talk about that of being spirit-led in your business with your spouse, with your family, making those business decisions. Like just talk about that. Like,
Well, and even to address just a little bit of what you were just saying too about making it, you know, just kind of going back to, spirit-led thing is definitely, I think if you're married, you know, and you have a spouse, I think it's really important to try to get your spouse to, you know, not necessarily be bought into your business, but in some way play a role in the business. You know, I think a lot as men, I think sometimes what we can do is kind of silo if we're married and we can say, well, the business, or when I go to work, this is me over here. And when I get home, like, I'm not going to even talk about my day or intertwine that in with my relationship. But even when I was working before I was, you know, doing my own business full time, I would come home and my wife and I would spend, you know, hours sometimes just talking about our day, and not just my day. Like I would want to know what she did. And, you know, I remember when we had kids, I would come home and I want to hear, what did the kids do today? And, you know, and for some people, I mean, if you had a real exciting day at work and you were killing it at work, you know, and you come home and your wife is staying home with your kids, that might not be as exciting to hear about her day, but to take time to do that and be intentional is really important. And so, yeah, you're right. I could talk for a while on just marriage and just that sort of thing too. But I will say that being spirit led and having a spouse that is on board with the business is really important. But, you know, the way you get your spouse on board with your business isn't by just saying, this is important, this is our income, this is what we're going to focus on. You know, you get them involved in that by, you know, hearing them out, letting them be a part of it, letting them give opinions, letting them, get involved and do it together if you can. Now, through the years, my wife, Christy, she has been involved in a lot of different ways. Just recently, now that our kids are grown, she's been way more involved with my business than she ever has. People used to always ask me, so, when we had little kids, like, does she go with you on the DJ events? I'm like, no, she does not go with me, but so she does do a lot of behind the scenes processing with me, a lot of prayer, we do, like you said, take every decision, everything that we're going to do, and we do it together. And we take risks together. I was a little bit more risky than she was earlier on, but she's getting to the point, especially nowadays, to where she's good at taking risks. But you got to start. You got to do it together. You got to go along the way. You don't want to do anything. If you're a young entrepreneur and you're newly married, you definitely don't want to do anything that's too risky, especially if it involves money, and it involves taking money away from your family or setting yourself up for failure, or putting a house up for collateral or anything foolish like that. Like, you definitely do not want to do any of that stuff without, your wife being on board with that. But there are ways to still take risks, but don't give away the farm. Don't do anything crazy like that. But building trust with your spouse on that and letting them be a part of as much of it. And a lot of it's just sharing everything. I mean, there's times where, as men, sometimes I feel like we want to, say we got it. I don't want to come home and tell my wife that I'm a little freaked out about this, or, I remember during 2020, everything completely dried up. We had no events. We're in the events business.
Right, yeah, you're in the events business. And
and I remember
that's the main thing.
On the way home just thinking, like, how am I going to explain and let her feel still like we're going to be okay as the spiritual leader of the home and all that, it's like, how am I going to do this? And, and you have to lean on the Lord in that, and so I think that's important. But being Spirit-led, just anything that you're going to do that's big, truly pray about things, like truly let the Spirit lead you on things. Like pray for discernment if you don't have it. If you're just very trusting of things, and you've maybe been burned a few times, just pray for more discernment. Pray for those opportunities for you to maybe research things a little bit better before you say yes to them, before you invest in something, before you buy new gear. For my business, we never took out any loans, any business loans. And that's great, for us. I know that's not the same thing.
Actually.
I mean, but and there's certain things certain industries where you may have to invest. You may have to take out a loan to get a building if you're going to start a restaurant or whatever, who knows. But for me, I was able to do everything, without taking out any loans or anything except for property. That's the only loans that we have for the business is for property. And we have 2 buildings now. And so that's been a part of it. But for everything else though, try to grow slow and steady. Like try to do things with rented gear if you're doing something in the creative field. Try to do things with rented vehicles if you have a delivery service or something. Try to do something where you can, leverage just a little bit of that risk and not just go all in until you flush it out and if something's actually going to work, for a little bit long term. So those are important. But again, going back to being Spirit-led on all those decisions, it's huge. And I definitely think you'll learn really fast if you exclude the Lord from those decisions, and exclude, hearing from the Holy Spirit on that, you're gonna find it real quick. It's gonna be a lot more difficult of a road to travel for sure. So,
oh my goodness, there's so much wisdom in everything you said. I mean, there is nothing worse than wishing you would have waited on God.
Yeah,
there's nothing worse than like, you know what?
Yeah,
I maybe should have asked him. Mm-hmm. And I heard someone recently said, getting ahead of God doesn't make you early; it makes you wrong. And it's good. Like I think there is like. When I look at someone like yourself, other seasoned people in business, I don't see a ton of people making quick business decisions. Like it's slow, it's methodical. And they're even willing, like obviously there's timing where it's like, hey, like there's certain things you gotta make a decision on. Yeah. But there's a lot of things of like, no, I've been around this enough. I'm gonna wait till this plays out. And if I miss it, I miss it. But I'm not going to be haste.
Right. Yeah.
And I think there is a wisdom to that, and including the Lord and slowing down.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Slow and steady. And I think one of the big things to that, if you're starting something new and you're like, you see somebody else doing what you want to do, it's really easy to fall into that trap of comparison and think like, I mean, it would be easy for somebody who wanted to, if they're wanting to DJ weddings, to see me and go, oh, well, I'm just going to do and buy, and get a warehouse and all these things. And it's just, you got to do what works for you for a while. And honestly, for me, I mean, early on, and I still do this today. Like if there's something where you feel like that comparison is popping up and it's starting to mess with you a little bit, and you'll know when comparisons, when you're starting to sort of obsess over what somebody else is doing, hide them on social media. Do some drastic stuff, because that'll trap you big time. And so even with that, slow and steady, and don't look at what someone else has taken 20 years to build and think like, I want that now, and I'm going to start to sacrifice my family or my kids or my relationships or my bank account or my, whatever it might be to get there really fast. Because there's a process. And, I think the important thing to remember in processes like that, besides patience, is that there's so many lessons to be learned that the Lord will teach you through the waiting.
Yes.
And I remember, quick story, when I left radio, my career, I went and worked at my wife and I knew we wanted to, get out of radio, and I wanted to run my business full time, but I went to go work for a TV production company, and it was just like another relationship connection. And I went to help them run their internet department. I knew nothing really about running an internet department. I didn't even know, we were building websites for their TV shows or whatever. But during that time, I had to learn SEO, like search engine optimization. I took courses and, started to just learn all this stuff to help them with this stuff. And then, I knew that wasn't even a job that I was going to do long term. My wife even, would tell me like, I feel kind of sad that you're doing that right now, because that's just not something for you to, that just doesn't seem like what you would be doing with your life right now. And, and it wasn't glamorous, but I mean, and it was a great company, everything, great people. But looking back, it's crazy how the Lord wastes nothing. Like, so, even today, like if you hop onto Google and you search for, Fort Worth wedding DJ or whatever, you're going to see us at the very top of the, like there's probably like the Knot or one of the big websites, but like we're going to be the first real company that you see on there. And that's because I just learned a little bit about SEO when I was there. I'm no expert at it, but I learned enough to help with my own business. And so looking back, I might have been in that season. And maybe if you're in one of those seasons right now where you're feeling like, what am I even doing here? I'm working this full-time job. I'm doing my side hustle in the middle of the night, which I did. I did it during lunch breaks and in the middle of the night. Is it ever going to take off? Is it ever going to, am I learning anything while I'm stuck here is kind of, what I was thinking. And looking back, I can say, like I learned so much that actually helped me today. But it's in that waiting sometimes that you just, you don't think you're going to learn anything, but you look back and you're like, wow, thank you, Lord. Like you taught me some things, some valuable things during that time.
It was a setup.
Yeah, totally.
I look at this of like the first time we filmed, I told Jason, the first time we filmed, I never felt more alive. I was like, this is what I was born to do. Yeah. I can sense it. I can feel the presence of God every time we do this. And you can think, man, why wasn't I doing this? But honestly, if you have any type of hindsight, you're like, oh, I was not ready.
Yeah.
One, but I needed all these lessons. I needed all these relationships. Like we were talking about it earlier off camera of like almost every relationship that I've had of people on the show, they've been relationships I've cultivated for over a decade, some of just doing life with people, getting their guidance. And then, then I asked them, like I had equity in relationships. Right. And so it's like, there's so many things that we want now, but like you said, like we don't know, we can't discount any season. We can't discount, like if you're in a job right now that you're like, you're doing a side hustle on the side and you're just hoping that you can get to full time, like nothing is wasted. No relationships wasted. No experience was wasted. When I worked at an agency, none of that was wasted, and I got laid off. All those relationships I still have. They're actually one of my biggest clients now. Like, nothing is wasted.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's so wise. And is there anything else on your heart as we close, or just something that you sense that?
Man, I think relationships, just a little bit more about that. I think that's important to remember, because I'm looking back at my story even from a real young age. I mean, my first job, I was 12 years old working at an outdoor flea market thing, selling like martial arts equipment or something, And I remember, but it was a relationship. I knew somebody. And then I remember my next move was somebody saw me working there and said, hey, come work for me over here. And then the next job was that, and went to go work at a mall and ended up at a radio station that came out to our mall that hired me in and got into radio, and then started doing weddings and all this thing. And so I look back at all these relationships, and I've never applied for a job, early on. I've never, gone through that process, which I think, it all goes back to the relationships. It's just, realizing that, God has put people around you for a reason, and you don't want to use people. You don't want to look at people as a stepping stone to get where you want to get.
Transactional. Yeah.
And it goes back to that being a there you are person, like you really want to like learn more about the people that God's placed in your life and really get to know them and their story. And you never know, like for you, Mukwenda, I mean, you probably, all of a sudden the Lord will lay somebody on your heart that you met probably 10 years ago that you're like, hey, I'm going to call them because they might be able to do this or be on my show or what, And so I think just really realizing that those are rich things that after it's all said and done, honestly, after I'm in a walker and can't DJ anymore and whatever, the relationships are going to be what's left, my family, and that's another thing I want to impart to people is just that don't sacrifice your family, like there's going to be seasons for getting out there and killing it and doing all the things that you want to do. But there's going to be seasons where if you're a husband that you need to focus in on your wife, if you're a dad, you definitely need to focus in on those years. And I know you hear these things as an entrepreneur and you think, yeah, but I'm trying to provide for my family. I'm trying to, get enough money. I just feel like, man, that's you're missing it. If that's really what your goal is to get enough money. Like the Lord is your provider. He will take care of all those things, but you got to put the things that he's given you. You have to steward those things well. And I would say one other thing I want to just share that's been a huge part of me and my story is just generosity. Like I said, didn't grow up going to church. I remember my very first time hearing about tithing, and I just thought, like, what is this all about? It was a foreign concept to me when I got old enough to have a job and started tithing and everything. And but from that moment on, I decided, I was going to put the Lord first in my finances, and I wasn't going to even think about it. I wasn't like if I can start making more money, I'm going to start being generous. I'm going to start tithing and start doing other things. It honestly will never happen.
No,
because the more you get, the harder. But not even just with money. I think it's important early on. I was generous with my time. I still am. I will gladly give time to anybody who wants to go to a coffee with me. I will gladly. Other businesses. I remember during the year of 2020 when we had no events, the only thing I knew to do was to go pour back into people in the industry and just, reach out to them, see how they were doing and how they were coping with things and try to encourage them. And again, just being generous with your time, with your talents, with what God's given you to do. And of course your resources too, being able to not be, stingy about things at all and always doing the right thing. And sometimes when you're generous, it's a little easier to do the right thing, especially if it's like, you did something wrong for a client, you need to refund them or whatever. Like if you have that generosity, spirit, it's just so much easier to realize like it's not ours anyway. My time is not mine, really. I mean, it's like the Lord could take me any day. So I think that's a really important thing too. That's just a lot about my story is the generosity side of things. And so I would encourage, start now, start being generous with your time, start doing things, start being generous in your relationships, start pouring into people, start mentoring those behind you. And again, go back to humility. Just realize that you can learn a lot from people, even if they're better at something than you, and just be generous with your time with them too, and start to learn and grow. And you'll be amazed with what the Lord does with it all.
Wow, so good, so much. I mean, so much wisdom. We could talk forever, but thank you. I want to thank you for how you've poured into me.
Absolutely.
These years. It's been real guidance to me. There's been correction. There's been just even business-wise ideas, things that I'm doing now that you've helped me with. And it's just been a real inspiration. And I see him all the time, almost every week. We go to like the same Starbucks and so we always give each other a hug. And I'm always curious what you guys are doing and just doing life together. So
and I'll say it's not one-sided. I've learned so much from you. I've learned so much from just your walk with the Lord and watching how you worship and how you serve the Lord and how you step out and do things and in business and how you want to put him first. And we've had conversations even off camera that just, about your heart. And I know, a lot of what's in there too, and just how you want to serve. And so it's a two-sided thing, like, and I think that's the way you need to look at all relationships. It's sometimes you might have a mentor, if you call him that or whatever you want to call him, someone you look up to, but they're learning just as much, a lot of times. And, be a mentor to somebody, if you aren't doing that, take someone, disciple somebody, you'll grow so much more. And, if you're discipling them in faith, if you're discipling them in business, you're going to learn so much more and grow so much more than what you would have if you wouldn't have stepped out and done that. So be generous with your time and invest in others, and you'll be blown away.
So good. Thank you. Thank
Absolutely.
you for coming on, man. Mm-hmm. I'm so excited and excited for people to listen to this, and it's going to be blessed. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this week's episode of the Faith Hustle Podcast. We hope it encouraged you, equipped you, and got you ready for your faith hustle. If this is something that resonates with you and you want to join this community, we encourage you to subscribe to the podcast, whether it be on YouTube or on any audio platform that you listen to. Also, subscribe to our email newsletter. We put out tips every week to help your business. And lastly, if this podcast has been any encouragement to you, we want to ask if you can leave a review for us. It really helps us to get to more people so more business owners can be impacted by the community and the message. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.